3 days before Christmas, parents texted, "Better if Robin doesn't show up." I replied with this: "My name is Jessica Monroe, and I'm 33 years old. For most of my life, I believed that family was a safety net. It took one text message, 3 days before Christmas, to show me that for my family, I was never the person they wanted to catch. I was just the net." The phone buzzed on the coffee table, a cheerful, innocent sound in the quiet of my small apartment. It was the family group chat, the one named Monroe Clan. My thumb swiped across the screen, expecting a last-minute question about who was bringing the mashed potatoes for Christmas dinner. Instead, I saw a message from my mom. "Hi, everyone. Just sorting out final numbers for Christmas Eve. After the events of last month, your father and I think it would be better if Jessica doesn't show up this year. It will just be too uncomfortable for everyone." The words didn't seem real. I read them once, then twice. My vision blurred, the white screen swimming in front of my eyes. Uncomfortable for everyone. It was so polite, so sterile. It was a corporate firing, not a family conversation. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, and drop a comment to let me know where you are watching from. My sister Chloe sent a single emoji, a thumbs up, as if mom had just confirmed the time for dinner. Then my brother Adam, another. A moment later, my Aunt Carol, my mom's sister, liked the original message. A little red heart appeared next to the words that had just surgically removed me from my own family. No one asked why. No one said, "Mom, that's harsh." No one sent me a private message to check if I was okay. There was just a series of silent digital endorsements of my exile. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The blood roared in my ears. They were all there, in that digital room, watching me be thrown out into the cold. And they all agreed it was for the best. That was when the final, soul-crushing blow landed. A new message from Adam. It was just an emoji, a clown face. Then another from Chloe. They weren't just agreeing with my banishment. They were mocking me for it. They were laughing. The pain was so sharp, so instant. It felt like a physical impact. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the screen, at the smiling, painted faces of the clowns, and something inside me, a part that had been bent and bruised for years, finally snapped. The part that always made excuses for them. The part that always paid the bill. The part that always forgave. It was gone. My thumbs moved with a strange, cold calm. I typed out a reply, my own message in that slaughterhouse of a group chat. I didn't plead. I didn't ask for an explanation. I didn't rage. I wrote, "Good, but you won't see me again either." I hit send. Then, without waiting for a reply, I left the group. The notification popped up on my screen, simple and final. "You left the group." And in the crushing silence of my apartment, with the half-decorated Christmas tree blinking innocently in the corner, I finally let myself shatter. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. My phone, now dark and quiet on the table, felt like a bomb that had already gone off, leaving nothing but ringing in my ears. I sat on my couch, my body frozen, staring at the spot where it lay. The world had narrowed to that small black rectangle. It was the portal through which my life had just been detonated, and I couldn't look away. I kept replaying the sequence of messages in my head. It wasn't just the words. It was the method of delivery. They hadn't called. My mother, who could spend an hour on the phone debating the merits of different brands of canned tomatoes, couldn't pick it up to tell me I was uninvited to Christmas. My father, who prided himself on being a man who said things to your face, hid behind his wife's text. They had chosen to do it in a public forum. It was a performance. It was a statement, not just to me, but to the entire family. Jessica is out. This is the new reality. Get on board or you'll be next. And they all got on board so quickly. The thumbs-up emojis from Adam and Chloe felt like little digital guillotines. Quick, clean, final. There was no hesitation. It was an immediate and enthusiastic agreement. My own siblings, the brother whose security deposit I paid when he was broke, the sister whose car I'd co-signed for because her credit was shot. It was nothing to them. I was nothing to them, but it was the clown emojis that truly broke me. That was pure, unadulterated cruelty. It was a kick after I was already on the ground. It said, "Not only are you out, but your pain is funny to us. Your shock is a joke. You, Jessica, are a clown." I thought about them, Adam and Chloe, probably sitting in their respective homes, phones in hand, smirking as they scrolled through the emoji keyboard to find the perfect one to express their contempt. Did they coordinate? Did one send it, and the other laugh and send it too? The thought made my stomach clench with a sickness so profound I had to press a hand to my mouth. This wasn't a family dispute. This was a public shaming. It was a modern-day witch trial held in a WhatsApp group. Every person in that chat was a witness. My aunt, my cousins who were also in the group but had remained silent. Their silence was just as loud. It was complicity. They all watched it happen and did nothing. They saw the text, the emojis, and they let it stand. I was utterly, completely alone. My gaze drifted from the phone to my living room. The festive cheer felt like a mockery. A half-strung garland of pine needles drooped over the mantelpiece. A box of ornaments sat open on the floor, the delicate glass balls glinting in the light of the tree. In the corner, leaning against the wall, were the gifts. I had already bought them all. A new leather wallet for my dad. A ridiculously expensive skincare set for my mom that she'd been hinting about for months. A top-of-the-line gaming headset for Adam. A designer handbag for Chloe. A knockoff, but a good one she'd never be able to afford otherwise. I had spent weeks thinking about those gifts, trying to pick out the perfect things that would make them smile. The irony was a bitter pill in my throat. I was buying tokens of affection for people who were, at that very moment, planning how to cut me out of their lives. The gifts weren't just objects anymore. They were monuments to my own stupidity. They were evidence of a one-sided love affair I'd been having with my own family for 33 years. With a surge of cold energy, I stood up and walked to my phone. My fingers were stiff as I unlocked it. I didn't open the messages. I couldn't bear to see those clowns again. Instead, I went to my contacts list. Mom, Dad, Adam, Chloe, Aunt Carol. One by one, I selected them. My thumb hovered over the block button. There was a moment of hesitation, a lifetime of conditioning screaming at me not to do it. They're your family. You don't turn your back on family, but they had turned their back on me. They had done it with smiles and emojis. I pressed the button. A small confirmation window popped up. Block this contact. I pressed it again. And again. And again. With each name that was blocked, a strange sense of lightness filled my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was the release of a pressure I hadn't even realized I was under. The pressure to please them, to earn their love, to be good enough. After blocking their numbers, I went to my social media apps. I unfollowed them all. Then I deactivated my own accounts. I didn't want to see their smiling Christmas photos from a vacation I was supposed to be on. A vacation they probably would have tried to get me to pay for if I'd just caved. I didn't want to see their lives at all. I needed a clean break, a total amputation. I walked back to the couch and sank into it. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a vast, hollow emptiness. The tears finally came, hot and silent. They weren't the loud, sobbing tears of a tantrum. They were the quiet, weary tears of grief. I was mourning. I was mourning the family I thought I had, the one I'd kept telling myself existed just beneath the surface of their selfishness and dismissiveness. But it was a lie. It had always been a lie, and the truth, delivered in a group text, had finally, irrevocably, set me free. The freedom was terrifying. It was the freedom of a sailor whose ship has just sunk, leaving him alone in the middle of a vast, dark ocean. I was free, but I was also completely adrift. To anyone on the outside, my family looked normal, even close-knit. We had Sunday dinners. We celebrated birthdays. We posted smiling photos during the holidays. But beneath that carefully curated surface, our family operated on a different set of rules. The rules were unwritten, but I knew them by heart. Rule number 1, Adam and Chloe were the priorities. Rule number 2, Jessica was the resource. It started subtly, when we were kids. If there was one cookie left, it went to Adam because he was the boy, or to Chloe because she was the baby. My needs were always negotiable. I was the responsible one, the easy one. That label, meant as a compliment, became my cage. It meant I was expected to understand, to sacrifice, to not make a fuss. It meant my feelings were less important because I was strong enough to handle disappointment. As we grew into adults, the dynamic didn't change. It just got more expensive. I was the first one to get a stable, well-paying job. I worked in logistics for a major shipping company, a field my family found dreadfully boring. There were no fancy titles or glamorous perks, just long hours, complex problem-solving, and a steady, significant paycheck. I was a saver by nature. I didn't buy flashy cars or designer clothes. I drove a 10-year-old Honda, and my biggest indulgence was buying books. I was building a future, saving for a down payment on a house, socking money away into a retirement account. My siblings took a different path. Adam drifted from one get-rich-quick scheme to another. He was a serial entrepreneur, which was a nice way of saying he was chronically unemployed and terrible with money. He was always just one brilliant idea away from making millions, but in the meantime, his rent was always late. I can't count the number of panicked late-night calls I received. "Jess, I'm so sorry to ask. he'd begin, his voice slick with manufactured shame. My landlord is a real jerk. He's threatening to evict me. I just need a little help to get me through to the end of the month. I swear I'll pay you back as soon as my new venture takes off. I always knew the money was a gift, not a loan. His ventures never took off, but I'd send it anyway. Because what was I supposed to do? Let my brother be homeless? My parents would guilt me if I even hesitated. He's your brother, Jessica. Family helps family. Chloe's brand of financial incompetence was more stylish. She had a taste for luxury she couldn't afford. She worked part-time as a receptionist at a spa, but her social media presence looked like that of a millionaire's daughter. New clothes every week, expensive dinners, weekend trips. She lived in a constant state of financial crisis, always one maxed-out credit card away from disaster. I was the one who paid for her car repairs when she couldn't afford them. I was the one who co-signed for her new SUV because no bank would approve her. When she inevitably forgot to make a payment, my credit took the hit, and I had to cover it to protect myself. Thanks, Jess. You're a lifesaver. She'd chirp, and then a week later, I'd see a picture of her on Instagram, clinking champagne glasses with her friends at a rooftop bar. It felt like she was toasting with my money. My parents were the conductors of this symphony of dependence. They enabled it, encouraged it. They never held Adam or Chloe accountable. Instead, they'd praise Adam's ambition and Chloe's vibrant social life. My stability, my hard work, was taken for granted. It was just there, like the electricity or the running water, something they could tap into whenever they needed it. I once got a significant promotion at work, a huge step in my career. When I told them at Sunday dinner, my mother nodded politely and said, "That's nice, dear," before immediately turning to Chloe to ask about her new haircut. My success was boring. It was invisible. But my savings account? That was very, very visible to them. I even helped my parents. A few years ago, my dad's business went through a rough patch. They were in danger of missing mortgage payments. I didn't hesitate. I drained a significant portion of my own house fund and gave it to them. Not as a loan, but as a gift. "We don't know what we'd do without you, Jess," my dad had said, his voice thick with emotion. I thought that moment had changed things. I thought they finally saw me, truly saw my contribution and my love. But the gratitude was fleeting. Once the crisis passed, the old dynamic slid right back into place. I was still just the family ATM. They didn't see my sacrifices. They only saw the solution to their problems. The money I gave them wasn't a chunk of my future, my security, or my dreams. It was just money, and I had it, and they needed it. To them, the transaction was that simple. I was the responsible one. It was my job. Looking back, I realized I wasn't just their financial crutch. I was their emotional one, too. I was the one who listened to my mother's complaints, who mediated fights between my siblings, who remembered birthdays and anniversaries. I was the glue, the quiet infrastructure that held the fragile facade of our family together. And my reward for all of it was to be treated like a service provider. Useful, reliable, and utterly unloved. The love and affection were reserved for the shiny, irresponsible, and entertaining members of the family. I wasn't entertaining. I was just necessary. And it turns out, when a necessary part stops performing its function, it doesn't just get repaired. It gets thrown away. The beginning of the end happened a month before the infamous text message. It happened over a linen tablecloth at a stuffy, overpriced Italian restaurant my parents loved. It was the kind of place with dim lighting and waiters who looked down on you if you couldn't pronounce the name of the wine correctly. My mom had called it a special family dinner, a phrase that should have been my first warning. In my family, special was often code for, "we want something." I arrived a few minutes late, stressed from a long day at work, but I put on a smile as I slid into the booth. Everyone was already there, sipping wine and laughing. Adam was telling some exaggerated story about a business meeting, and Chloe was showing off a new bracelet. They were glowing with the kind of easy, unearned confidence that I had always envied. "Jessica, you made it," my mom chirped, as if my attendance had been in question. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare," I said, settling in. The small talk was painfully familiar. I asked about their weeks, feigned interest in Chloe's spa gossip, and nodded along to Adam's latest nonsensical business pitch. I felt, as I often did at these gatherings, like an anthropologist studying a strange foreign tribe. I looked like them. I shared their blood, but I did not speak their language. Their language was one of casual entitlement, of expecting the world to bend to their whims. My language was one of spreadsheets, deadlines, and consequences. After we ordered, my father cleared his throat, setting his wine glass down with a deliberate thud. This was his CEO of the family gesture. It meant an announcement was coming. "So," he began, a broad, self-satisfied smile on his face. Your mother and I have been doing some planning. We think it's been far too long since we've had a proper family vacation. A real one. My mother clasped her hands together, her eyes sparkling. We've decided on Aspen for Christmas. A beautiful big lodge, skiing, hot chocolate by the fire. The works. It will be a Christmas we'll never forget, Chloe gasped dramatically. Oh my God, Aspen? I've always wanted to go. Adam grinned. Nice one, Dad. I could use a break. I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. A trip to Aspen for 5 people over Christmas was astronomically expensive. I kept my expression neutral. Wow, that sounds amazing. When were you thinking of booking it? This was my opening. My dad seized it. That's the best part, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. The friendly fatherly facade dropped, replaced by the cool, calculating gaze of a businessman about to close a deal. We can book it tonight. We've found the perfect place. He then turned to my siblings. And you two don't have to worry about a thing. It's all taken care of. Then he looked back at me. The whole table went quiet. The trap had been set, and I had walked right into it. Jessica, you've been doing so well for yourself, my father said, his voice smooth as butter. You've been so smart with your money. Your mother and I were talking about how proud we are, and we thought, what better way to celebrate your success than by having you treat the family to this wonderful experience? I stared at him, my mind struggling to catch up. Treat the family? He wasn't asking me to contribute. He was telling me I was paying. For everyone. My mom jumped in, her voice bright and breezy, as if she were discussing the weather. We ran the numbers. For the lodge, the ski passes for everyone, the equipment rentals, and a little extra for food and spa treatments. It comes to about $22,000. $22,000. The number hung in the air, obscene and suffocating. It was almost the entire down payment I had painstakingly saved for a small condo. It was my emergency fund. It was my future. Chloe and Adam were grinning at me, their eyes wide with greedy anticipation. They weren't even trying to hide it. They were already spending my money in their heads. Chloe was probably picturing her new ski outfits for Instagram, and Adam was likely seeing it as a networking opportunity. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't a request. It was a demand. It was a tax for being the responsible one. I can't do that, I finally stammered. The words felt small and weak in the face of their monumental expectation. The smiles around the table vanished instantly. It was like a switch had been flipped. My father's face hardened. What do you mean you can't? I don't have $22,000 to spend on a vacation, Dad, I said, my voice growing a little stronger. That's my house savings. That's everything, my mother scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Jessica. You can always save more. This is about family, about making memories. You're really going to be that selfish? Chloe chimed in, her voice dripping with venom. We finally have a chance to do something amazing together, and you're going to ruin it over money. Ruin it? I was the one being robbed, and they were painting me as the villain. The gaslighting was so audacious it was almost impressive. This is unbelievable, Adam muttered, shaking his head as if I were a deep disappointment to him. After everything we do for you. That was the line that did it. Everything they do for me. The sheer mind-bending delusion of that statement. I'm not paying for it, I said, and this time my voice was cold and firm. There was no apology in it. It's out of the question. If you want to go to Aspen, you'll have to figure out how to pay for it yourselves. The silence that followed was glacial. My father stared at me, his jaw tight with fury. My mother looked like she was about to cry, a tactic she often used when she didn't get her way. Chloe and Adam were glaring at me with pure, undisguised hatred. In that moment, I wasn't their daughter or their sister. I was a broken appliance. I was the ATM that had just displayed an out-of-service message. I had failed to perform my primary function. My father picked up his wine glass. Fine, he said, his voice dangerously low. Dinner's over. He signaled for the check, and no one said another word to me for the rest of the night. They talked around me, about me, but not to me. As we left the restaurant, my mom brushed past me without a word, her shoulder bumping mine. It was a clear, deliberate act of dismissal. I walked to my car alone, the cold night air doing nothing to cool the hot rage and betrayal burning in my chest. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I had crossed a line. I had said no, and in my family, that was the one word they would never forgive. The month between that disastrous dinner and the Christmas execution text was a masterclass in psychological warfare. The weapon of choice was silence. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket they wrapped me in, and it was brutally effective. In the first few days, I tried to pretend things were normal. I sent a message to the group chat with a funny picture of my cat, something that would usually get a few reactions. This time, nothing. Just the cold, damning confirmation that the message had been read by everyone. I told myself they were busy. I told myself they were still upset and needed time to cool off. I was making excuses for them, a habit I had perfected over a lifetime. A week went by. I called my mom, needing to ask her a question about a family recipe. The phone rang and rang before clicking over to her cheerful recorded voicemail. I left a message, keeping my tone light and casual, pretending I hadn't noticed the wall of silence. She never called back. The isolation became more deliberate, more pointed. Chloe posted a story on her Instagram, a picture of her, Adam, and my mom having lunch at a cafe we all used to go to together. The caption was bubbly. "Best afternoon with my favorite people." It was a digital dagger. They weren't just excluding me. They were advertising it. They wanted me to see them, happy and together, their little circle closed and complete without me. It was a clear message: we don't need you. We're fine. The self-doubt began to creep in, a toxic whisper in the back of my mind. Was I the one in the wrong? Was I selfish? The $22,000 was a lot of money, but they were my family. Maybe I should have just paid it. Maybe the memories would have been worth the financial devastation. I tormented myself with these thoughts, replaying the dinner conversation over and over, wondering if there was a different way I could have handled it. A softer way to say no that wouldn't have resulted in this utter banishment. But then I would remember the looks on their faces, the entitlement, the greed, the instant switch from affection to contempt the moment I denied them what they wanted. It wasn't about family. It was never about family. It was a transaction, and I had failed to uphold my end of the unspoken bargain. The loneliness was crushing. My life had been so entwined with theirs. I had built my schedule around Sunday dinners, my budget around their inevitable financial emergencies, my emotional energy around managing their dramas. With them gone, there was a huge, gaping void. I'd come home from work to a silent apartment, and my first instinct would be to call my mom to chat about my day. Then I'd remember. I would scroll through my phone, wanting to share a funny meme with Chloe or ask Adam for his opinion on a movie, and I'd have to stop myself. The invisible threads that had connected me to them for my entire life had all been severed at once. I spent Thanksgiving alone for the first time ever. I saw my aunt post a picture of the whole family gathered at my parents' house. Everyone was smiling, holding up glasses of wine. I wasn't in the picture. I wasn't even mentioned. It was as if I had simply ceased to exist. I ate a frozen pizza on my couch and watched old movies, trying desperately not to cry. The grief was immense. It felt like they had all died, but worse, because they were alive and well, and had simply chosen to live without me. By the second week of December, the last vestiges of my hope had shriveled and died. I stopped checking my phone for messages that would never come. I stopped looking at their social media. I started to accept the new reality. Their silence wasn't a temporary punishment. It was a permanent amputation. They had cut me off. That's when the anger started to replace the sadness. How dare they? After all the years I had been their safety net, their bank, their problem solver, the moment I set a single boundary, the moment I protected myself and my own future, I was disposable. The realization was sickening, but it was also clarifying. I was sitting on my couch one evening, staring at the Christmas tree I had forced myself to put up in a sad attempt at holiday cheer, and it all became crystal clear. I was never a daughter or a sister to them. I was a utility. I was the family emergency fund, a bank account with legs. My worth to them was directly tied to my net worth, and when I refused them access to my funds, my worth as a person plummeted to zero. The isolation was their final, desperate attempt to control me. They thought that by cutting me off, they could make me so lonely and desperate that I would come crawling back, wallet in hand, begging for forgiveness and ready to book the flights to Aspen. They thought I would break. They underestimated me. They had no idea that their silence wasn't just isolating me. It was insulating me. It was giving me the space to see them for who they really were. It was giving me the quiet I needed to finally hear my own voice. And that voice was telling me it was time to go. The group text, when it finally arrived 3 days before Christmas, wasn't the attack they thought it was. It was the confirmation I didn't even know I was waiting for. It was the official notarized document releasing me from my lifelong obligation to them. It was, in its own twisted way, a gift. For 2 full days after I left the group chat and blocked my family's numbers, I did almost nothing. I moved between my couch and my bed in a haze of grief. I ordered food I didn't eat and watched television shows I couldn't follow. The blinking lights of the Christmas tree felt accusatory, each tiny bulb a reminder of the life that had just been ripped away. The silence in my apartment was a living thing, pressing in on me from all sides. In that silence, the voices of self-doubt grew louder. You're alone. You have no one. You brought this on yourself. You should have just paid them. What is money compared to family? But on the third day, something shifted. I woke up, and the grief was still there, a heavy weight in my chest, but it was accompanied by something else, a cold, clear spark of anger. Not the hot, messy rage I had felt initially, but something calmer, more focused. It was the anger of pure, absolute clarity. I saw the pattern of my life laid out before me like a map, and I could finally see the dead end I had been driving towards for 33 years. The road was paved with my sacrifices, and at the end of it was a sign that read, "You are not enough." I got up, took a shower, and for the first time in days, I got dressed in real clothes. As I was making coffee, my eyes landed on a framed photo on my kitchen counter. It was of me and my siblings from a decade ago, on a rare family trip to the beach that I, of course, had paid for. We were all smiling. It looked like a happy memory, but I remembered the truth of that day. I had spent most of it chasing after Chloe's forgotten sun hat and listening to Adam complain about the sand in his shoes. I had been their concierge, not their sister. With a sudden, decisive movement, I took the photo out of the frame, tore it into 4 neat pieces, and dropped it into the trash can. It was a small act, but it felt monumental. It was the first step. I took my coffee to my laptop and sat down. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I just knew I couldn't stay here. I couldn't stay in this city, in this apartment, in this life that was built around the gravitational pull of my family. With them gone, the orbit was broken, and I was just floating. I needed a new star to navigate by. That's when I remembered the email. It had come through about 4 months ago. My boss, a man named David, who had been my mentor since I started at the company, had called me into his office. He told me the company was opening a new major logistics hub in Seattle to manage all of their Pacific Rim shipping. It was a massive undertaking, and they needed a strong director to build the operational team from the ground up. He had offered the position to me. It wasn't just a promotion. It was a quantum leap. It came with a huge salary increase, significant stock options, and the kind of career-defining responsibility I had only dreamed of. I had been ecstatic for about 10 minutes. Then reality, in the form of my family, had set in. How could I move across the country? My mom relied on me to help with her computer problems. My dad needed me to review his business paperwork. Adam was in the middle of another venture that would surely require a bailout soon. Chloe would be devastated if I wasn't around to have brunch with her every other weekend, and pay for it. I had told David I was deeply honored, but that my family needed me. My roots are here, I had said, a phrase that sounded noble at the time. He had looked disappointed but understanding. The offer stands for a while, Jessica, he'd told me. If you change your mind, let me know. We'd rather wait for the right person than hire the wrong one quickly. At the time, turning it down had felt like the right, noble, responsible thing to do. Now, sitting in the wreckage of my family life, I saw it for what it was, the single stupidest decision I had ever made. I had sacrificed a golden opportunity for people who would discard me over a ski trip. My roots weren't holding me up. They were strangling me. My fingers trembled as I opened my laptop and pulled up my work email. I searched for David's name and found the email thread about the Seattle position. I read his original offer, and the words shimmered with the light of a possible future. A future that was mine. A future 3,000 miles away from the Monroe clan. This was my escape hatch. My heart was pounding. What if the offer was gone? What if they had already found someone else? It had been months. I had to know. I clicked reply, my cursor blinking on the blank screen. For a moment, I was paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of what I was about to do. This wasn't just changing jobs. This was changing everything. This was setting fire to my old life and walking away without looking back. I took a deep breath and started to type. I kept it simple, professional. I didn't want to sound desperate even though I was. Subject, Seattle Director Position. Hi, David. I hope you're having a good week. I'm writing to you today to inquire if the director position for the new Seattle branch is still available. I know it has been some time since we last spoke about it, but circumstances in my personal life have recently changed, affording me the flexibility to relocate. If the opportunity is still open, I would like to be considered for it. I remain incredibly enthusiastic about the project and the challenges it presents. Thank you for your time. Best, Jessica Monroe. My finger hovered over the send button. It felt like a trigger. I clicked it. The email vanished from my screen, sent out into the world. There was no taking it back. I closed the laptop and felt a wave of nausea mixed with exhilarating terror. I had just thrown a Hail Mary pass. Now all I could do was wait and see if it would be caught. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. Every buzz of my phone made my heart leap into my throat. I tried to distract myself. I took down the Christmas tree, packing away the ornaments with a strange sense of detachment. I boxed up the presents I had bought for my family, sealing the flaps with tape. I wasn't just packing away decorations and gifts. I was packing away a whole identity. The identity of Jessica, the dutiful daughter and sister. She was being put into storage. I wasn't sure who would emerge in her place, but I knew it wouldn't be her. The next morning, as I was nursing my third cup of coffee, my work phone rang. The caller ID said David Chen. I snatched it up so fast I nearly dropped it. "Hello?" I said, my voice coming out as a squeak. I cleared my throat. "Jessica Monroe speaking." "Jess, it's David. I got your email," he said, his voice warm and energetic. I have to say, it was the best thing to land in my inbox all week. I held my breath. "Is the position still available?" He continued, a laugh in his voice. "Of course it is. We've been interviewing people, but no one had your combination of experience and grit. I was holding out hope you'd come to your senses." "So, does this mean you're officially throwing your hat in the ring?" Tears of relief pricked my eyes. "Yes," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Yes, absolutely." "I want it! Fantastic!" he boomed. "It's yours. No need for more interviews. I'll make it official. Our HR director, Sarah, will be in touch with you this afternoon to go over the formal offer and the details of the relocation package. And Jess, welcome to the next level. You've earned it." We hung up and I sank onto a kitchen chair, the phone clutched in my hand. It was real. It was happening. A hysterical laugh bubbled up out of my chest. It was a wild, unhinged sound, but it was a sound of pure, unadulterated joy. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of profound, earth-shattering freedom. My quiet revenge wouldn't be screaming or fighting. It wouldn't be angry text messages or tearful phone calls. My revenge would be my own happiness. My revenge would be a successful career, a new life, and a future they had absolutely no part in. I had spent my entire life trying to buy their love. Now I would finally invest in my own. Sarah from HR called that afternoon. The relocation package was more generous than I could have imagined. They would pay to break my lease. They would hire professional movers to pack up my entire apartment. They would ship my car across the country. They would even put me up in a corporate apartment for 2 months while I searched for a place of my own. All I had to do was get on a plane. They were making it so easy to leave. It felt like the universe itself was conspiring to get me out. That night, for the first time in a month, I slept soundly. There were no nightmares, no waking up with a sense of dread. I dreamed of the ocean and the smell of pine trees and the feeling of starting over. I had chosen myself, and it felt like coming home. The week between accepting the job and Christmas Day was a blur of logistics and liberation. While my family was presumably packing their ski gear for Aspen, a trip I now suspected would never happen without my funding, I was methodically dismantling my life. I signed my official offer letter, my signature a bold, decisive slash of ink. I gave notice to my landlord, who was surprisingly understanding once he heard my company was covering the penalty for breaking the lease. I called utility companies and set cancellation dates. Each call, each email was a snip of the scissors, cutting another thread that tied me to my old life. Christmas Eve arrived, and with it, a strange sense of peace. My apartment was in a state of organized chaos, with stacks of boxes labeled kitchen, books, and clothes. I had spent the day sorting through my possessions, a process that felt like an archaeological dig of my own life. I found old concert tickets, forgotten letters, and photos from college. I was curating my past, choosing which parts were worthy of coming with me into the future. Anything that reminded me too strongly of my family. Group photos, gifts they had given me, trinkets from past holidays, went into a separate box labeled Donate. That afternoon, I took that box, along with all the beautifully wrapped presents I had bought for them, to a local women's shelter that was running a holiday drive. The woman at the front desk had tired eyes but a warm smile. "Wow, this is quite a haul," she said, looking at the designer handbag and the expensive skincare set. "Some people are going to have a very special Christmas." "Thank you." "No," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "Thank you." Handing over those gifts felt like shedding a heavy skin. They were no longer symbols of my foolishness but tools for someone else's happiness. I was converting my pain into a stranger's joy, and the alchemy of that act felt profoundly healing. That night, alone in my half-empty apartment, I ordered a pizza and opened a bottle of good wine I had been saving. Out of a morbid, fleeting curiosity, I used my laptop to log into a long dormant social media account my family didn't know about. I searched for Chloe's profile. It was public, of course. Her latest post was a picture of her, Adam, and my parents at the airport. They were all grinning, holding up passports. The caption read, "Aspen bound. Time for the best Christmas ever with the best family ever. Blessed." I stared at the picture. There was no sign of guilt, no hint of sadness. They had simply edited me out of the frame and moved on. The person I had been a few weeks ago would have been shattered by this. But the person I was now felt only a distant clinical pity. They were so busy performing happiness for their online audience that they were oblivious to the rot spreading through the foundations of their lives. They were celebrating on a deck I had built, a deck that was about to collapse. I closed the laptop. I didn't need to see anymore. Christmas Day was quiet. The movers weren't coming for another week, but the silence from my family was absolute. It was exactly what I needed. It was a cocoon. In the quiet, I could think. I could plan. I could heal. My power wasn't in shouting at them. It was in not letting them hear my voice at all. They had used silence to punish me, but I was reclaiming it. My silence wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. It was a fortress. The first crack in their fortress appeared 3 days after Christmas. I was in my kitchen labeling a box when my personal phone, which I had kept on for work-related reasons, began to buzz. The screen lit up with Chloe's face. My heart gave a little jolt, a Pavlovian response from a lifetime of her manufactured crises. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the green accept button. Part of me, the old Jessica, wanted to answer. It wanted the drama, the confrontation, the chance to finally scream all the things I had swallowed for years. But the new Jessica knew better. Answering the phone would be an invitation. It would tell them that the door was still open, even a crack. It would signal that their behavior could be debated, negotiated, and ultimately forgiven. I would be pulled right back into the vortex of their chaos. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A minute later, a text message appeared. "Jess, call me. It's important." I ignored it. An hour later, the phone buzzed again. This time it was Adam. I watched his picture flash on the screen and felt nothing but a profound sense of exhaustion. I let it go to voicemail. His text followed soon after. "Jessica, call me now. My rent payment was declined. Did you cancel the transfer?" This isn't funny. So it begins, I thought. The slow, dawning realization that the bank was closed. The next day, the calls became more frequent, more frantic. My mom called 4 times in a row. My dad left a curt, angry voicemail. "Jessica, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it needs to stop. Your mother is very upset. Call me immediately." The subtext was clear. Your job is to manage your mother's emotions. You are failing at your job. I never realized how much of my mental energy was consumed by them until the calls started coming and I simply didn't have to answer. Each time my phone buzzed and I chose to ignore it, I felt a surge of power. It was the power of choice, the power of non-engagement. They were sending out signals, distress flares from their dysfunctional island, and I was simply sailing away, my gaze fixed on a new horizon. I was no longer their coast guard. The day the movers arrived was gray and cold. 2 men, efficient and polite, swarmed my apartment, wrapping furniture in blankets and expertly packing my life into a massive truck. I stood in the corner of my empty living room, the space echoing with the ghosts of 1,000 one-sided conversations. It looked bigger now, emptier. It was a blank slate. As they loaded the last box, I did a final sweep. I left nothing behind but dust bunnies and bad memories. I handed the keys to my landlord, got into my car, and placed my phone in the passenger seat, screen down. I didn't need to see their names anymore. I had a 10-hour drive to a temporary corporate apartment ahead of me before my flight to Seattle. As I pulled out of my parking spot for the last time, I felt a single surprising tear roll down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of gratitude. They had meant to break me. They had meant to humiliate me and punish me. But in their spectacular, coordinated act of cruelty, they had accidentally given me the greatest gift of all, permission to leave. They had unlocked the cage and I was finally flying free. My silence wasn't just power, it was peace. My first few weeks in Seattle were a whirlwind of newness. The air smelled different, clean and damp with the promise of rain. The skyline was a jagged line of glass and steel against a backdrop of moody gray clouds, and on rare, breathtaking days, the snow-capped peak of Mount Rainier. My new job was everything David had promised. Challenging, demanding, and incredibly rewarding. I was building a team from scratch, making decisions that had a real impact, and working with people who respected my expertise. They saw me as Director Monroe, a competent and driven professional. No one saw me as Jessica, the family ATM. The reinvention was intoxicating. I found a beautiful apartment in the Queen Anne neighborhood with a huge window that looked out over the city. As I unpacked my boxes, I was deliberate about what I put on display. My books, my art prints, photos of my friends from college, a picture of my cat. There was no trace of the Monroes. My new home was a sanctuary, a space that was entirely and unapologetically mine. I had kept my family blocked, but the world has a way of delivering news you're not looking for. The first update came from a cousin, Sarah, my dad's niece. She had always been kind to me and had remained silent in the group chat, a fact I was grateful for. She sent me a message on a professional networking site, a space she knew my family wouldn't monitor. "Hey, Jess. I know things are complicated. I just wanted to say I've been thinking about you and I hope you're okay. Things are pretty messy back home," I wrote back, thanking her and telling her I was happy and doing well in my new life. I didn't ask for details, but she offered them anyway. "Your dad had to sell the house," she wrote. "He told everyone it was to downsize, but Uncle Mike let it slip that the bank was about to foreclose. They're renting a small townhouse way out in the suburbs. Aunt Gina is not handling it well." I read the message and felt a hollow ache in my chest. I had loved that house. It was the house I grew up in. I remembered my dad's pride when he and my mom had first bought it. He had lost it. Because without my monthly gift to help with the mortgage, a gift I had been giving for 3 years, his finances were unsustainable. My contribution hadn't been a little extra help. It had been the pillar holding up the entire structure. A few weeks later, another piece of the puzzle fell into place. I saw a venomous, vague post from Chloe on social media, which a friend screenshotted and sent to me with a caption that just said, "Yikes." Chloe's post was a long, self-pitying rant about fake people and how you can give someone your whole life and they can still betray you. The photo accompanying it was a selfie of her frowning on a city bus. The bus. It took me a moment to understand the significance. Then I remembered the sleek white SUV she had been so proud of, the one I had co-signed for, the one whose payments I had stopped making from my account. A quick, guilty search of public records confirmed it. The car had been repossessed a month earlier. The public humiliation of it must have been devastating for someone like Chloe, whose entire identity was built on projecting an image of effortless wealth. She wasn't just losing a car. She was losing her status, her props for the grand performance of her life. The news about Adam came from the same well-meaning friend. She had run into him while he was working, not as an entrepreneur, but as a barista at a Starbucks. He had been embarrassed and surly. He'd apparently been evicted from his trendy downtown apartment and was now living with 2 roommates in a rundown part of town. The seed money I had given him for his last venture, money he had mostly spent on expensive dinners and a new wardrobe, had run out, and with no new funding from me, he had been forced to get a real minimum wage job. The man who had mocked me with clown emojis was now serving coffee to people who were more successful than he would ever be. I watched their world crumble from a safe distance of 3,000 miles. I never gloated. I never felt a shred of triumphant satisfaction. The predominant feeling was a profound, weary sadness. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash, a crash I had known was coming for years but had been powerless to stop. My presence, my money, hadn't been preventing the crash. It had just been delaying it. I had been the airbag, deploying over and over to soften the impact of their terrible decisions. Now, the airbag was gone, and they were finally colliding with the consequences of their own lives. The most telling part was how they framed their downfall. In their minds, they were the victims. I was the villain. I was the one who had betrayed them, who had abandoned them, who had selfishly kept my own money. They had rewritten the narrative to absolve themselves of all responsibility. They had lived their lives on credit, both financial and emotional, and I had just called in the debt. Their anger was the anger of someone who believes they are entitled to something they have never earned. One evening, I was sitting by my window, looking out at the glittering lights of Seattle, a city that now felt like home. I thought about them, in their downsized house, their shared apartment, their bus commutes. Their lives hadn't just been supported by my money. They had been defined by it. My financial stability had allowed them to live in a fantasy world where actions had no consequences, where bills didn't have to be paid on time, where you could drift through life on charm and ambition without ever having to put in the hard work. I hadn't just been their bank. I had been their reality shield. By taking myself out of the equation, I had forced them to live in the real world for the first time. And the real world was not kind to people like them. Their collapse wasn't my revenge. It was just math. It was cause and effect. It was the natural, inevitable outcome of a lifetime of irresponsibility. And my greatest act of self-care was accepting that I was not, and had never been, responsible for saving them from themselves. My responsibility was to save me, and I had. Another 6 months passed. The raw, open wound of my family's betrayal had slowly begun to scar over. It was a part of me, a mark of my history, but it no longer ached with every breath. Life in Seattle had settled into a comfortable rhythm. I had my team at work, a small but wonderful group of friends I'd met through a hiking club, and my cozy apartment that felt more like home than my childhood house ever had. I was happy. It was a simple, quiet happiness, not the loud, performative version my family chased, and it was a happiness I had built for myself, piece by piece. I rarely thought about them anymore. The anger had dissipated, leaving behind a kind of calm detachment. They were characters in a book I had read a long time ago. I knew their story, but it was no longer my story. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, an email landed in my inbox. It was from an address I didn't recognize, but the subject line made my heart stop for a beat, thinking of you. I clicked it open with a sense of trepidation. The email was from Chloe. Jessica, I don't even know if this is your email anymore. I got it from Sarah's mom. I guess you've heard things are different now. Mom and Dad are in the new townhouse. Adam is working all the time. I'm taking the bus. It's not what we were used to. I've had a lot of time to think. About the dinner. About the text message. We were so angry and so stupid. We thought you were being selfish, but now I see that we were the selfish ones. We just took and never thought about what it was costing you. We treated you like you weren't a person, but just a solution to our problems. I know sorry is probably not enough. It's probably too late, but I am. I'm sorry, Jess, for the thumbs up, for the clown emoji, for everything. It was cruel, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. Mom and Dad miss you, even if they won't say it. We all do. We messed up. We broke our own family. Please come home. We need you. Chloe, I read the email once, then twice. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. A year ago, this email would have been a bomb. It would have sent me into a spiral of hope and confusion and anger. I would have dissected every word, searching for sincerity, searching for traps. I would have agonized for days over how to respond. But now, I just felt a profound sense of peace. The email was a portrait of their desperation. The apology felt real, or at least as real as Chloe was capable of. The regret was likely genuine, but it was a regret born from consequences, not from a true change of heart. They weren't sorry for how they had treated me for 30 years. They were sorry that their lives had become difficult. And the final line, the plea that was meant to be the emotional crescendo, was the most telling of all. We need you. They still saw me as a need, a solution, a utility. They didn't say, we love you. They didn't say, we want you to be happy. They said, we need you. They needed my stability. They needed my problem-solving skills. They needed my money. They needed the old Jessica, the one who would rush in and fix everything, who would absorb their chaos so they could live their comfortable lives. But that Jessica was gone. She didn't exist anymore. I had packed her away in a box and left her behind. I thought about what it would mean to go back. It would mean arguments and resentment. It would mean slipping back into old, toxic roles. It would mean my hard-won peace would be shattered against the rocks of their dysfunction. They hadn't changed. Their circumstances had. If I went back and fixed their problems, the old dynamic would reassert itself in a heartbeat. The apologies would fade and the entitlement would return. I knew this with an absolute, unshakable certainty. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window at the rain streaking down the glass. I thought about Chloe, picturing her typing that email, humbled and unhappy. I thought about my parents in their cramped townhouse and Adam on his feet all day serving coffee. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I just felt a deep, empathetic sadness for their brokenness. And in that moment, I realized I had forgiven them. It wasn't a grand, dramatic act. It wasn't a conversation or a declaration. It was a quiet, internal release. I forgave them for not being the family I needed. I forgave them for their selfishness, their cruelty, their limitations. I forgave them for being who they were. Forgiveness, I realized, had nothing to do with them. It had nothing to do with absolving them of their sins or telling them it was okay. It had everything to do with me. It was me letting go of the last heavy anchor of resentment that tied me to them. It was me choosing my own peace over their drama. I thought about writing back. A simple, I wish you all the best. But I knew that any reply would be seen as an opening, a crack in the door they could force their way through. My greatest power, my most profound boundary, was still my silence. My new life was my reply. I whispered the words into the quiet of my apartment, a soft benediction for a life I had left behind. I forgive you. My voice was clear and steady, but from a distance. I archived Chloe's email without a reply. I took a sip of my cooling tea and turned back to my work. The rain continued to fall, washing the city clean. And for the first time, I felt completely and utterly free. The story was over. It was time to write my own. Family is supposed to love you for who you are, not what you give. I lost years trying to buy love that never existed, but when I finally walked away, I found peace. If you've ever felt like the outsider, like your worth was only measured in what you could give, know this: walking away doesn't make you weak. It makes you free. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more stories, and share your thoughts in the comments below.